also on the editorial board, so several journals, many of us are familiar with one of the editors of optics communication. He has been one of the pioneers in near field optics. This word has been mentioned in one of the slides of the picture. The inventor of heat enhanced near field microscopy, three-dimensional microscopy, plasmonics, and multi-photon engineering and so on. He has authored more than 25 books, published more than 250 papers, and something interesting which I am not very familiar what it means. His work 8 micron microboule, which was made by 2-photon polymerization, his own invention, appears in Guinness World Book Record 2004 edition and in a mathematics textbook for middle school. He is one of the 3 editors of this. So the video.
Today. They are not in any great depth as the wonderful film that Dr. Brasicheria just showed, but perhaps make some interesting comments as to how they relate to science today. The first ones that were made by the most outstanding notions that you get from Dr. Bose's work is that no matter how many years ago he worked, over 100 years ago was most of his scientific work, much of what he's doing now, or much of what he did then, is still relevant now. And that is, it's not so often, it's not so frequent, that the work of a scientist, particularly an experimental scientist, stays relevant, and particularly his concepts, the idea of some of his ideas, which may at the time, particularly for Dr. Bose, were not considered maybe as seriously as they should have been considered, but now are being considered not only seriously, but people are recognizing how the value of his work that was made so many years ago, and in diverse fields. We heard this morning about wireless and his early work on microwaves. This was at a time when our understanding of electromagnetic waves was so fresh and new. Our understanding of radio waves, our understanding of visible light was still in its infancy. In 1895, no one had made a spectrum of visible light. The spectrometer was even invented in 1895. Yes, Dr. Bose was already looking at electromagnetic waves and recognizing halfway that they were electromagnetic waves in 1895. And that these were waves outside the visible spectrum, out in far infrared region of the spectrum. It wasn't called infrared in those days. Between visible and radio waves, one might say. And then his most outstanding tenacity that he demonstrated in building instruments. It was from building these instruments that he started to understand what we would call now microtechnology. The junction. That's another anecdote about another great man who had that same transition. I'm fortunate to know Charles Towns quite well. Who of course whose work we could celebrate next year. But he tells me, not only he, but some of his relatives, particularly his wife, who she knows him very well, and she also likes to tell many stories about him. But the story tells me that when he was a young teenager at school, he was at school in South Carolina, in the United States, in a town called Greenville, South Carolina. He went to a very good school there, Birmingham University. But before he went to the university, he was in the high school. And these family members tell me that although he was very good at mathematics and very good at physics in school, he just loved to be outside in the nature and to just to study things, to pick up stones and look at the insects underneath the stones and to figure out exactly what the purpose of this insect or this plant was. And it seems to be the measure of all great men that they have this breadth. Certainly Towns never lost it. I had the opportunity to have him to my house just 2 years ago after his award of an honorary degree at the university. And we just had a few people around for dinner and a very casual affair. And my house is on the lake, and so I know he is an avid bird watcher. So he and his wife came, and would you believe one of those big, long, tall birds, sandhill cranes, they were standing by the lakeside, and both he and his wife, with binoculars, rushed down to the lake to look at these birds. But on the way back, we were walking through the woods, and he picks this plant up, and he recognizes the title of the plant, and he was pulling the leaves off. You see, this leaf is for this, and this is for that. And he knew all about plant psychology. This was a physicist, microwave physicist, who knew and loved just plants. So there is, I think, a lesson here, both from Dr. Bose and maybe from Charles Towns also, that we tunnel vision focused engineers and scientists should really take heart, that we can move from physics to other disciplines, and we can make a difference. They did. He certainly did. In wireless now we talk about communications with light beams. So the work of J.T. Bose over 100 years ago is relevant to today. We are talking about free space communications using laser beams. We have an expert, I think in the front row here, on fiber optics. We missed the fiber optics from India. Yeah, we all know about communicating through fiber optics. But now there's a lot of talk about free space communications with laser beams, and I'll briefly mention the capacity that Of course, the semiconductor junction has led to semiconductor detectors, to the CCD, and as was mentioned in Dr. Bhattacharya's movie, in fact, Marconi, who so avidly, and if you read Marconi's biography, so avidly claimed that he was the inventor of wireless, he had to resort to using one of Dr. Bose's detectors to actually to measure the wireless the radio wave communication. So, this work of Dr. Bose permeates through the century in so many fields. And ultimately, plant physiology is still a new science now. And it's only now that with the advantages that we have of using coherent light and frequency controlled light and ultra short pulses, and now coherent light generated in other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, in the microwave region, particularly in the far